Hey guys, Omaha here. Today I'm going to be ranking every conversion kit in Modern Warfare 3 and giving you my best build for it. We got 41 to go through, so let's do it. Okay, first up we have the Jack Raven kit. The Jack Raven kit takes the MCW and basically pushes it more towards a submachine gun role while still having range like an assault rifle. You get faster fire rate. You do worse at longer range, but the handling and everything goes up as well. One downside I would say, if I had to give it one, is you're limited to a 40 round mag at most. But other than that, I think it's still highly competitive. It has a high TTK. Overall, I think this is a really good aftermarket part, and I think the Jack Raven deserves to go in the A tier. All right, for our second kit, we have the Jack Heretic Carbine kit for the MTZ762. And this basically increases your handling, rate of fire, and recoil control, but you lose damage. So it's trying to make it more of a close range weapon, and it seems to do that pretty well. Overall, the kit's pretty solid. There's nothing really to complain about, except the visual recoil maybe. The other downside is the 30-round magazine. It's not a lot, but you can put a 40-round magazine, and I ended up taking the red dot off and putting on the 40-round magazine for a little bit, and the iron sights are good enough to do that. And surprisingly, it actually reloads faster with the 40-round magazine rather than 30. You do end up slowing down your weapon a lot if you kind of swap out some of the attachments I put on, so I kind of went for a balance of speed with range. And overall, I'd say the aftermarket kit is pretty solid, and I feel pretty comfortable putting it in like the B tier. For our third part, we have the Jack Annihilator Bullpup kit for the Pulemyot 762, and this basically gives you way better mobility and handling, hip fire, tac stand spread, and recoil control. And what you lose is just range and bullet velocity. You do lose a decent amount, but there is a barrel for it that only increases your sprint to fire speed by 9%, no other downsides, and it massively makes up for that lost range. So it's effectively just better in every way than the Pulemyot 762. Overall, really solid, has a 100-round mag by default, pretty quick handling for an LMG. It kind of pushes more towards the AR stats. But overall, I'm a little hesitant to do it this early, but I think I want to put this in the A tier behind the Raven kit. I don't want to make this a super top-heavy list, but it feels really, really good. I think it does belong in the A tier. Okay, next we have the Jack Ferocity Carbine kit for the Renetti, and this turns the Renetti into a full auto SMG basically. You get way more range. This is a very, very powerful kit that makes it able to compete with most of the primaries in the game. It's actually better than most of the primaries in the game, I'd say. Honestly, the only downside to this kit is its swap speed, which takes a long time. Other than that, you can easily run this as a primary weapon and do really well. Okay, now where I'm going to rank this, it's a secondary weapon that's better than most primaries in the game. I think I'm going to put it in the S tier. Next up, we have the MCW 6.8 full auto conversion kit. So this makes the marksman rifle MCW 6.8 into a full auto variant, exactly what the title says. So you lose damage. It actually becomes a 3 to 4 shot kill. You get a little bit of rate of fire increase, like 13%, and then that's it. I found it a little underwhelming. You only get 20 rounds in the magazine, and you can't increase that at all. Just found it a little underwhelming. I think there's a lot of better long-range options in this game, and I found myself losing fights that I probably should have won. So I think this is something I'd probably put in the C tier. I don't think it's really all that competitive. Again, I could be wrong. Let me know down in the comments. Obviously, you can do well with it, like I was saying, but it's kind of just meh. Okay, next up, we have the Broodmother 45 kit for the WSP-9. It basically turns it into like an AR SMG hybrid. It slows down the fire rate quite noticeably and increases the damage. When using this, I found it was pretty weak. You're losing magazine capacity as well, and there's no way to increase that. A lot worse recoil. Damage range just goes down as well. Overall, it was very tough to win gunfights against sweaty people. I feel like it's worse than SMGs at close range, and it's worse than ARs at long range. It's not completely useless, like I was able to hold my own, but I think it's more around a C tier than it is a D tier. And I definitely think it's below the MCW. I think it's probably going to be towards the lower end of the C tier. Our next conversion kit is for the Core 45, and it is the XRK IPv2 conversion kit. This turns the Core 45 into a submachine gun, effectively. Basically, every time you click the trigger and release the trigger, it fires. So it's like doubling your fire rate. It actually increases it from 450 to 800, so it basically does double the fire rate. It increases your range by a lot, reduces your kick by a lot. It just hurts your handling and your damage a little bit, but honestly, it's not enough to bring this thing down. It's just better than the Core 45, and it can replace a primary weapon, just like the Renetti can. So it's pretty easy for me to put this thing up next to the Ferocity Carbine. It's basically just as good in my opinion. Next up, the WSP Swarm has the WSP Akimbo Brace stock, which effectively makes it an Akimbo weapon. Well, that's literally what it does. Next up, we have the WSP Akimbo Brace stock for the WSP Swarm, and this makes it into Akimbo WSP Swarms. You do, however, and this is the main drawback, you lose a ton of damage on it. You also lose fire rate, 39%. This thing's a lot weaker than what I was expecting it to be. It's not terrible, but I was losing almost every fight I got into with Sapiri. I would lose that if they were a good player. So I got a lot of hit marks with this, more than I would think I would get. But really, if you're gonna go Akimbos, you might as well just go the Akimbo Renettis. Those are just vastly superior to these, and it's a secondary weapon. Like I said, they're not bad. I think it's just a C tier. They kind of underperform in some situations, a lot of situations, but they're not outright terrible. Okay, well, next is the Jack Nightshade Rifle Kit. And I'll be the first to admit I haven't used this really at all since it came out. I used it when it came out. I liked it. And for some reason, I haven't used it since. I don't know why I haven't. This thing is insane. I didn't want to stop playing when I was using this for this video. I just wanted to keep using it. It's really, really cracked. I don't know how this is in every single lobby. It's all I see is Superis and Statics, but I don't know why I don't see this instead. I actually think this might be better than those. Super strong. It reduces your damage, actually, increases your fire rate by a decent amount, and then your handling goes through the roof. Because it is an LMG, you're converting basically into a submachine gun or assault rifle. I think it's an assault rifle. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this thing. It's absolutely an S tier. I was not expecting this to be an S tier, but it is an S tier for sure. Actually, while I'm here, I forgot to mention, I moved the WSP above the Broodmother because it is better than the Broodmother. MCW, I'm not 100% sure. They're kind of just neck and neck right now. And then the Nightshade, I'm going to move that up to the top because these two are really good and they replace a lot of primaries, but they're secondaries, and that is part of the reason they're in the S tier. This thing is just straight up better than everything I've used so far. It's incredible. So top of the list so far. Next, we have the Jack Headhunter Carbine conversion for the Rival 9. It turns it into a 3-round burst weapon, massively reduces the recoil, and massively improves the range by like 123%. That also improves your damage. You only lose 3% fire rate, and even though it's a 3-round burst, you can actually hold it down and it'll continue to burst without any delay, so there's no penalty. You can just hold it down and treat it like a full auto weapon. But I personally think this is better than the Rival 9, just straight up. You can compete with snipers, which is odd to say. Has incredible range, incredible accuracy, and it's called the Headhunter for a reason, because if you get one headshot with this thing, it's GG's. They're dead. It's just really, really strong overall. Again, this is my favorite aftermarket part alongside the DM56 Signal Burst and now the Jack Nightshade Rifle Kit, because, yeah, that thing's crazy too. All right, as for where I want to put this in the tier list, I really want to put it in S tier. And I think I might, but I do feel like the list is getting a little top heavy at this point. Yeah, I'm just going to roll with S tier for now because I think it's that good. And then we'll see where everything ends up at the end of the video. Next up is the Jack Beholder Rifle Kit for the tier Revolver. So this will let you use tactical stance. It's going to massively increase your bullet velocity and your minimum effective damage range. Your recoil goes down by a pretty massive amount as well. And then you lose some handling and some movement. But overall, I'd say this kit, if you like the tier Revolver, you're better off running this kit in every single way you want to run the tier. Whether you want to run it close range, long range, whatever, I think it's just better in every way. But yeah, you can literally throw a sniper scope on it, run it as a sniper rifle. So it's really fun in that way. So for ranking it, it's kind of a weird one because it is kind of niche, and I think C tier is kind of where I want to put my niche stuff. It's basically a budget sniper rifle. I want to put it in the C tier. It's not bad, but it's not like super good either. All right, next up is the Jack Signal Burst. This is on the Holger 556 as well as the DM56. I'm gonna use the DM56 version because it's simply better. But what you get is increased bullet velocity, way better control. It turns it into a 4-round burst. You lose a little bit of handling, and that's basically all you lose. Massively reduced recoil. You do lose a little bit of damage, but you get increased rate of fire too. I'll say the one thing right now. If you like the MA1 in Black Ops 2, this is literally almost copy-paste the same gun. It has basically no recoil. This is probably the best non-sniper weapon in the game at challenging snipers at sniper ranges. Now, I can't speak for the Holger 5.56 version because I don't really use it at all. I've used it like one time, and it's pretty widely known that the DM56 version is better. So I'm not going to rate that version, but the DM56 version is an S tier for me. And actually, I probably would put it higher than that. Actually, probably put that up there too. Next up is the Jack Ettin double barrel kit. This basically gives you 2 barrels, and then everything else is cons. The damage goes down, the range goes down, the rate of fire goes down, and the recoil goes down. And the barrels are like on top of each other. There is a little bit of spread the farther you shoot away. Surprisingly, I found this to be pretty decent. I was expecting it to be completely terrible because for some reason I feel like I heard really bad things about it and I haven't used it since it came out. Overall, it was fine. I mean, I didn't really have any issues. Like, I think the only issue I came across was if somebody's on a head glitch kind of far away, like medium to longer range, it's really tough, kind of hard to get them because you're not hitting with both bullets at that. Obviously, because the bottom barrel's gonna hit like the concrete or whatever they're head glitching. And other than that, man, it was pretty solid, like medium-ish kind of range. I think this is a B tier. I think it's fine. It's pretty good. Okay, next is the Jack Thunder LMG kit for the Sidewinder. It turns the Sidewinder into LMG. It also, this is probably the best praise it's gonna get. It turns the worst gun in the entire game into a usable, functional weapon. You lose a lot of damage. You lose a lot of handling, but you get a lot of recoil control and a lot of range and a lot of rate of fire. You can only have 50 rounds max, and that's its biggest downside. It ramps up, like the longer you hold down the trigger, the faster it fires. And with 50 rounds in the mag, and it seems like it takes about 10 to 12 rounds to really get to its full fire rate, you're kind of cooked if you're in close range. You're not going to win a lot of gunfights in close range. It's actually really bad in close range. That being said, once you get it ramped up, it absolutely shreds and deletes people. So ranking this on the tier list is pretty easy for me. If this had a higher magazine capacity, if I could go above 50, I would definitely put it at least in the B tier. Probably in the B tier. However, because it doesn't have that, it's got to go in the C tier. Somewhere in here, these are kind of all blending together. It's not really so much about left to right in this tier list as it is just the tier they're in. Next up is the Jack Tyrant 7.62 kit for the longbow sniper rifle. So this allows for tactical stance. It's gonna increase your effective damage range, but reduce your minimum damage range. And then your damage overall is just gonna go way up. And then your recoil is way worse, but that doesn't really matter for this type of weapon. And your rate of fire goes down. So overall, my opinion of this kit is that it just simply is a longbow, but way better. I think it just makes the longbow a better weapon. There's no reason to use the longbow by itself when you have this, in my opinion. To be fair, I don't use the longbow all that often on its own, so I could be wrong. I think the kit's really good. It's super fast handling, it's strong, one-shots most of the time. You get like a 20-round magazine, that's huge for this type of weapon. Overall, I do think it is competitive with the other snipers. So I think A tier is where I'm going to put that. I think it's pretty competitive. All right, next up we have the Jack Maglift Kit for the Haymaker shotgun. This one's actually pretty interesting. You double your fire rate, but you reduce your damage by like almost half. So it's almost like the same damage. It ends up being more because it only reduces it by 40%. It increases your effective damage range, but reduces your minimum damage range. And then your hip fire gets a lot better. Overall, this thing is extremely fun if you like shotguns, and it's extremely fun if you just want to just spam shotgun, because it's like a 60-round drum mag. It shoots incredibly fast. You can just not worry about your accuracy at all. Just run into a room and just go crazy. It's not amazing, though. There's definitely shotguns that are better. Know what I'm talking about again. I'd say this is a high B tier. That could be off, could be wrong, but I'm thinking high B tier feels about right after using it recently. All right, now we have the Jack Burnout Kit for the Holger 26 LMG. What this does is it makes the fire rate basically go through the roof, like plus 42%. It's up to 1,000 rounds per minute. It's gonna reduce your effective damage range and increase your minimum damage range. And then it's gonna increase your damage a little bit as well, but not at longer ranges. It's kind of weird. I found this gun to get a lot of hit markers. Yeah, overall it was decent. Like, it wasn't super crazy competitive or anything like that, but you know, it did fine. I think comparing it to probably another LMG like the Thunder LMG, I think it's better than the Thunder LMG. Definitely not as good as the Annihilator Bullpup. Maybe high C tier. Yeah, I think it could fit in the low end of B tier. We'll put it there. All right, now we're on the Jack Backsaw Kit for the Holger 556. This gives you 2 barrels, just kind of like the AMR 9-1, but this time they're like side by side instead of on top of each other. You do lose out on some damage, but obviously you have 2 barrels, so it makes up for that. Almost all the attachment slots are locked. Your barrel, muzzle, under barrel, and magazine slots are all locked. So that is a pretty big downside. However, the gun itself is actually really, really good. I was pleasantly surprised. I think as long as you keep it within its intended range, which is close to medium, it absolutely shreds. I was like instantly deleting people at close range. It's better than the Ettin double barrel. I think I want to put it because of the limitation of the attachments. That is purely the reason I want to put it in B tier. Otherwise, it would easily be an A tier. All right, next up is the Jack Outlaw-277 Kit for the BAS-B. Turns into like a lever action. It's very unique in that when you hip fire, it has a faster fire rate than it would normally when you ADS. But overall, it just increases the damage a lot, handling, hip fire, attack stance. It's not nearly as good as it used to be. That being said, it's pretty decent. I would say this is easily in the B tier. It works. Now that we are kind of like halfway through, I kind of wanted to take the time now to shuffle a couple things. I do think I need to move these 2 down to A tier, even though it's sad. I think just objectively, trying to be more objective, I think A tier is more of a fitting spot because of some of the other things coming along. They're going to be, well, maybe just one. You guys know the Devastator is going in the S tier. I don't know what to tell you. These things aren't always the easiest things to use, so that's why I'm going to bring them down. Okay, next up we have the Jack Shadow Titan kit for the Bruin Mark 9 or Bruin MK9. And this gives you a built-in suppressor, way better handling. Your handling goes through the roof. A lot better hip fire and tactical stance spread, better mobility, less recoil, and a little bit faster fire rate. And then it increases the open bolt delay just barely, but it's not really noticeable. Your range goes down by 30%. I think overall this kit's just a straight up upgrade to the Bruin MK9. And actually, oddly enough, I was going through and comparing the stats with the Jack Raven kit for the MCW because it felt kind of similar TTK wise. As far as damage, handling, like every single stat across the board, this thing was only off by a couple digits. They're actually very, very similar, which is very weird. The Bruin MK9 actually has a faster sprint to fire speed, but a little bit longer ADS speed. So it feels really good. It does have that open bolt delay, but it's not too bad. As far as placing this in the tier list, I'm gonna have to put it somewhere around the A tier, probably the lower end of the A tier. Put it up here in the A tier towards the end, kind of near the Annihilator and the Raven, because for me, all 3 of them are kind of neck and neck. Next up, we have the Jack Jawbreaker. This turns the KV broadside, which is a shotgun, into a full auto battle rifle, and this thing hits like a truck. It does 65 damage to like the lower or the upper legs, so it's always a 3-shot kill at least. So it's extremely consistent. I found myself not really losing any engagements with this. Even at long range, you can contest snipers. Close range, it has good enough handling to compete with even SMGs. I found myself beating people with Superiors. It has an ADS speed of like 257 milliseconds and a sprint to fire of 212 with the attachments I had on. Overall, it's super, super good. Putting in the tier list, I'm gonna have to put it in the A tier. I really think the only thing holding this thing back is the magazine size. And the reload, even with mag holster, is very slow. Next up, we have the Jack Revenger kit for the BP50. This takes the BP50 AR and turns it into an SMG. You get a little bit of fire rate, you lose some damage, you lose some range, and then you get more mobility and handling back. You get a 60-round magazine for this, which is really good. This gun used to completely run the game for, I think, probably a couple months after it came out. It was running the game in the sweaty lobbies. This is like the only thing you would see. Over time, though, it's been replaced by the Superi and the Static HV, and even the Striker 9. Those 3 guns, I think, are just better. That doesn't mean this isn't competitive. It's not super competitive now. but it's kind of a shadow of its former self. A lot of nerfs. I would say this is a high B tier now. Actually, I think the Backsaw is better than this now. All right, next up we have Jack Wardens, which is an aftermarket part for the Lockwood Mk2 from Modern Warfare 2. Turns a marksman rifle into the Akimbo 1887s from OG Modern Warfare. Not as strong, but when these first came out, it was pretty dang close. Back in the day, those literally could compete with snipers across map. This game, when they came out, they could on some maps. They weren't as far range, but you could compete with ARs at any range pretty much. Now you're kind of pushing it if you're going into medium range, I would say. Close range, you're deleting everybody. They don't have a whole lot of like downsides unless you consider reloading a downside. Maybe it's range now. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's still the best ranged shotgun, I would say, in the game. I'm hesitant to put these in S tier. I think they're either the very top of A, the best of the A tier, or in the bottom of the S tier. I'm gonna put in the S tier. Next up, we have the Jack Atlas kit for the AMR9. This turns into a 5-round burst. You get a lot less recoil and a little bit more range, and it reduces your damage and fire rate. There's not a lot to say except that it's just a wannabe Jack Headhunter, wannabe Jack Signal burst. It's worse in almost every way than those two. Actually, it is worse than every way. I like what they were trying to do, making a burst SMG kind of like the Headhunter, but it's simply just worse in every way. It's definitely the worst aftermarket part that I've used so far. 100%. No doubt in my mind about that. It's going to go bottom of C right now. I may end up putting it in the D tier. We'll see at the end. All right, next up is the Jack Patriot for the M16. This turns it into a full auto weapon, turns it basically into an M4. It's actually extremely similar to the M4 from Modern Warfare 2019, so if you liked that gun, you'll be right at home using this thing. It's not as good as that, obviously, but it feels almost the same. So you end up losing a little bit of damage, you get a lot more recoil control, a lot more rate of fire, 36%, and then just a tad more range. Overall, I found this kit super solid. There weren't any glaring flaws in it. It held its own really well. I was versing a pretty sweaty team with it, and I did just fine. I didn't win every single gunfight, obviously, but it held its own just fine. I would say this is probably going to go right in here. I think it actually is probably better than the Revenger kit on the BP50 now. All right, next up we have the Jack Decimator for the Lockman Shroud. This turns the 3-round burst Lockman Shroud into a full auto MP5, which we already have with the Lockman sub from Modern Warfare 2. So honestly a little confused when they added this in the game, but it is a little different. It's very close range, and that's its really only limitation is close range. You have to be close to medium range. Even medium range, you're kind of pushing it. If you're in close range, though, you should be winning almost every single gunfight, unless they're using the Devastators. In that case, you're almost certainly cooked. But other full auto weapons in the game, you should be winning almost every single time. Superi, yeah, you should be able to win those. Static, you should probably be able to win those as well. I think this is an A tier. Super competitive in the range it's meant for. You try to go beyond those ranges, you can get kills, but it's going to be a lot harder. Probably just going to put it right here. Again, for this list, don't go so much off the left to right. It's more about the tier itself. These can kind of just like flow back and forth, you know? Unless it's like way over here on the far left, obviously it's going to be way better, or not way better, but just better than the ones on the far right, that type of thing. But if they're right next to each other, they're probably about the same, or maybe one's better than the other, and I just missed something. Okay, next up we have the Jack Intimidator kit for the Renetti. If you've used this, you already probably know what tier this is going to go in. So it turns the Renetti into a single shot semi-auto weapon, I should say. And it improves the damage by like 82%, but that's so deceptive because it's just laughably bad. Your rate of fire goes down by 46%, down to like 333 rounds per minute. Honestly, guys, it's so bad that I literally would not recommend this to anybody unless they're on the other team, or if they're on my team and I just want to get more kills than them, like straight up. Honestly, though, as a serious recommendation, I would never use this for anybody. Like it's worse than the Renetti in every single way possible. And it's worse than most of the other pistols in the game as well. And alas, we have our first D tier aftermarket part. So they did a pretty good job with the aftermarket parts so far, I gotta say, because nothing's really terrible. Next up is the Jack Harbinger Kit for the M4. It turns into a 50 cal, and it slows down the fire rate drastically by 70%. So you're down to 245 rounds per minute. Your damage goes up by like 200%, so it's actually like 100 damage per shot, making it a 2-shot kill. You lose a lot of recoil and a lot of mobility and a lot of handling. It's basically trying to perform the same role as the Jack Jawbreaker, but it's just worse in almost every way. The Jack Jawbreaker is better at short, medium, and long range. The fire rate is way too slow. I think that would be the main thing they would have to do if they ever went back to this game and buffed this thing, would be to increase the fire rate. That's like its biggest problem. Putting on the marksman gloves did help, and I found myself doing better after putting those on, but it kind of underperforms. I think I'm going to stick it down here in the middle-ish of C tier, probably next to the Broodmother, because I remember that performing similarly. Okay, next up, we have the Jack Requiem for the cast-off 545 and the cast-off 762, and you can use it on whatever one you like. I prefer this cast-off 762 over the other one. In either case, I think this is a straight upgrade to both weapons. For the cast-off 762, you get minus 15% bullet velocity and minus 4% rate of fire. The rate of fire difference isn't really noticeable. And then the benefits you get are minus 50% recoil gun kick, minus 86% horizontal recoil, which makes it almost zero, and then minus 100% vertical recoil. It literally sets it to zero, so you have zero vertical recoil. And so if you like either of the AKs, I 100% recommend running this, no matter what. The AK itself, without this attachment, I would say is probably a low B tier weapon in this game. I don't think it would break into the A tier personally, but I do think it at least brings it up to the high B tier. I'm gonna stick it there, and I'm pretty happy with that. All right, next up we have the Jack Scimitar Kit for the FJX Horus. So this basically turns it into like an AR SMG hybrid. It doubles your range, literally, plus 98%. You get plus 35% bullet velocity. You get a little bit of a hit to your rate of fire. It's minus 16%. And then your handling goes down a little bit. It's like 15 to like 20% for some of the stats. Overall, the FJX by itself is probably better at the closest ranges, but medium and long range, this is going to be far superior. And it actually kind of performs a similar role to the Jack Raven Kit, although I actually prefer this over the Jack Raven Kit. One thing about this gun is it's probably the easiest gun in the entire game to use. Not the best gun in the entire game, but it is very competitive. It's very good at all ranges, and it's just very, very easy to pick up and immediately know how it's going to work and use. I'm going to put this right here in the A tier, right above the Jack Raven Kit. All right, next we have the Jack Thumper 656 aftermarket part for the RGL80. This is just an immediate upgrade. It increases the velocity if you just use the normal ammo, you don't change the ammo type, but it allows you to switch your ammo type as well. The only penalties are ADS speed and sprint to fire. I honestly don't think that matters very much on this type of weapon. But you get 3 ammo types, so you get the slugs, which will give you 12 rounds total, and it actually increases your fire rate by a lot. So you can fire a lot faster. This is the best way to run it if you're going purely for kills, in my opinion. You can actually just one-tap people across the map as long as you have good aim, and you can pull off some pretty crazy things with it. It also has sticky rounds and drill charge rounds. I only recommend using sticky and drill charge for taking out riot shields, or the drill charge if you just want to spam it in a room or something, but overall, super niche. So I'm going to put it in the C tier just because it's simply just niche. I don't really know what else to do with that. I think C tier is where I was going to put all my niche stuff anyways. So you can definitely pull off some crazy things with the slug rounds, and then the rest of the ammo is kind of just for taking out riot shields. But if you're going to try to take out riot shields, I actually recommend using the compound bow with the explosive rounds instead. Next up, we have the Jack Volk for the KV Inhibitor Sniper Rifle and the KVD Enforcer Marksman Rifle. On the Sniper Rifle, the KV Inhibitor, I actually think it's about even with the base gun. I don't know if it's necessarily better or worse. Usually you're one-shotting with the KVD Enforcer or the KV Inhibitor anyways, so I don't really think it's super necessary. But for the KVD Enforcer, it actually is better overall, I think. It's very solid as long as you hit your shots. If you miss and you're actually in a firefight, like the enemy's shooting back, you're 100% cooked because the delay between each burst is a very long time. As for placing the Jack Volk, I think it's about even with the Outlaw-277. I think the Volk might be better at longer ranges. The Outlaw's probably a little bit better at closer ranges, but they're overall pretty similar in what they're trying to do. Okay, next up we have the Jack Gunslinger for the Basilisk Revolver from Modern Warfare 2. So what this does is it gives you increased capacity, increased fire rate, reduced recoil, better handling, and you lose out on about 50% of your damage. So it makes it way more spammable, way more accurate, way more easy to move around with, and you get way better hip fire. If you want to run around and spam it, I think it's really fun to use. I actually like it better than the normal Basilisk. It's not super OP or anything like that, but it does have the best inspect animation in the entire game. It's pretty sick. You can run it Akimbo, but you lose even more damage. I don't really recommend it. I recommend just running it solo. Okay, as for where to place the Jack Gunslinger, super fun. Takes about 3 shots to kill minimum, and there's a lot of semi-auto pistols in this game that can do that with way bigger magazine capacities and way better iron sights and less recoil. So it's C tier. And while we're on the subject of that, secondaries, I think the Beholder rifle I kind of slept on. It kind of can do the same things as the Outlaw-277 in a secondary weapon. So yeah, I think I'm gonna put it higher than that. I'm gonna put it in the B tier because it's a secondary weapon that can one-shot pretty far out. Next up, we have the Jack wide mouth barrel for the Moors sniper rifle, the railgun basically, and it turns it into a blunderbuss. Pretty crazy, pretty awesome. You get way better hip fire accuracy and way better mobility. Obviously, you lose range. Overall, this thing is actually a pretty decent shotgun. When this came out, I thought it was gonna be terrible, but you know, it's actually pretty freaking good. As far as placing in the tier list, I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think it's solid. It can hold its own with a lot of other shotguns. It's probably better than the Maglift. It kind of just depends on the situation, I guess. You can get multi-kills with the wide mouth barrel. It definitely has better range, although the Maglift has just an insane mag capacity. So I'm not really sure which one's better than the other, but I'm going to put it right next to it. Next up, we have the Jack Cataclysm Kit for the RPK LMG. This turns it into a 50 caliber sniper rifle. And yeah, it's pretty strong. When it first came out, it was like a one tap to your little pinky toe. It was pretty insane. Way less recoil back then too, but they've nerfed it since. It's still one shots, pretty decent range, but I think at the farther ranges now, it's like a 2 shot to the chest. The recoil actually isn't too bad. It says it's pretty high, but it's pretty manageable. And you get a 15 round drum mag. And overall, if I was going to rank this thing, I would say it is somewhere in the lower A tier. It's probably better than the Tyrant 762 because that's similar, but it's not semi-auto like this is. I think the bottom of the A tier is a good spot for this. I'm going to put it there. All right, next up, we have the Jack Protean for the RAAL LMG, and this makes it into like a hybrid weapon where you can switch between full auto, and the full auto is even different from the normal LMG. It's probably like slightly worse. It's a little bit different. It just has faster fire rate and lower damage. Maybe it's up to preference. But then the other mode is like a DMR. By default, you have a 75 round mag, and you can actually put 50 round mag on and make this have like 300 millisecond ADS and 153 millisecond sprint to fire, which is pretty quick for an LMG. But the longer ranges, it'll be about a 3-shot kill. Closer ranges, a 2-shot kill. Overall, it's like a solid kit. I wouldn't say it's bad, but I wouldn't say it's like really good either. I would probably place this somewhere in the B tier. Probably like right above the Volk. I'll just stick it right there. All right, next up we have the Jack Death March, which turns the BAL-27 into a 3-round burst energy weapon. Your damage skyrockets. So it goes from like 34 and 37 to 100 no matter where you hit them. So you only have to hit them twice in a 3-round burst to kill them. Bullet velocity goes way through the roof. It goes from 800 to 1,860, so it's almost like hit scan. This thing is pretty crazy if you use it right. As soon as you click the trigger, there's like a delay. I don't know how long exactly it is, but it charges up and then it fires the 3 rounds. So that is honestly the only thing that sucks about this. Everything else is phenomenal. It's extremely strong other than that. If the delay was shortened even, it would make it into the A tier. I just think the delay can get you killed, but if you play it right, you can definitely pop off with this thing and just go on a rampage. So I think high B tier is fitting for that. Okay, next up we have the Jack Devastators, which is the Akimbo Reclaimer 18. Your range goes down by 40% and your handgun goes up, your hip fire goes down. These things are insanely broken. This is the best aftermarket part in the game, hands down. The only way to survive an encounter with these is to just run away. These will win 95% of the time at close range. Simply put, there's just not a better option at close range than these. You're going to be undefeatable. The only limiting factors for these are 4 rounds in each shotgun and its range. That's just how it works. These are the best aftermarket part in the game. Probably the only thing on this list that I would definitively say needs some sort of nerf. All right, for our second to last part, we have the Jack Salvo for the KATT-AMR sniper rifle. It turns it into a rocket launcher sniper rifle. Your bullet velocity is like minus 70%, only 200 meters per second, so it's pretty bad. This is probably the worst aftermarket part in the game. The splash damage is extremely low. If they're running EOD, which they will if they die to this enough, you have to get a direct hit to kill them. And because the rocket travels so slow, that's pretty difficult to do. Also, you only get 3 shots in the magazine with no way to increase that, which is also painful. And plugging it into the tier list, I mean, it has to go below the Intimidator. You could easily get more kills with the Intimidator than the Salvo. You know, it is fun to use. It's the meme cannon. It's fun for trolls. People do get pretty mad when they die to it. It can be kind of funny, but realistically, it's got to be the worst aftermarket part in the entire game, and so there it is at the bottom of the list. All right, next up we have the Jack Lance for the MX Guardian from Modern Warfare 2. So it turns the shotgun into a rivet gun or a giant nail gun. It's very cool and interesting. It's actually a one-shot from the upper legs upwards. The thing about it is its bullet velocity is only 110 meters per second, so it's very, very difficult to hit long-range shots because you have to compensate for the drop and you have to compensate for leading the target if they're moving side to side. Another downside to this is if you put any sort of sight on it whatsoever, even a red dot sight, it'll add a minimum of 48% to your ADS speed, so it really hurts. This is a very high skill weapon, I would say overall. Obviously, close range, not so much. You can just spam it, but you only get 3 shots. Long range, very high skill weapon. Probably the hardest weapon in the entire game to use, except maybe like the Jack Salvo. That thing's just pure luck, though. This is probably the hardest one in the entire list to rank. You can either be really good with it or you can be really bad with it. Odds are it's more towards the bad because it's kind of hard to use, but I'm gonna stick with the B tier and just let me know if you guys agree or disagree. We have the Jack Volt Storm for the Stormbender. So this changes it from an EMP gun into an electric shotgun with infinite ammo. It's a guaranteed kill within 7.6 meters. It does have a lot of downsides that are not mentioned at all. First of all, it has a permanent laser that's always visible. If you have the gun out, period, there's a bright blue beam, like if you have a laser sight on. Second of all, when you're charging the weapon, for like the first, I think it's like 3 to 4 seconds, you're gonna be visible on the radar and live. So after about 3 or 4 seconds, I think it's about 4, it'll disappear, and then you can actually keep it charged, and it's not really easy to hear. Even if you're right next to somebody, you can't hear it. So, and the third thing that's kind of holding it back is when you charge it up, there's no specific indicator when it's 100% charged up, and so if you release it like a millisecond early, it just won't fire at all. And that's gotten me killed quite a few times. It is a pretty short range, but being a guaranteed kill is really, really good. Now, it does have a lot of drawbacks to, you know, kind of keep it in check. And this just came out like a week ago, so it's still pretty early. Maybe there's a bug with being on the radar, or maybe there's not supposed to be a laser on it because none of those are mentioned. So that could change, but for now, I think it's gonna be in the B tier. I'll put it right there. I'm kind of trying to think if I want to move anything around. I think I kind of already did move everything I was already thinking of as I was going through the list. It seems pretty good. I'm pretty happy with where everything is. If you guys disagree with anything by like a lot or at all, actually, if you disagree at all, let me know down in the comments down below. And if you guys enjoy this type of content, subscribe. I'll be doing stuff like this for Black Ops 6. I'll be making best build videos for Black Ops 6, all kinds of stuff. I'll probably be streaming it if my internet allows. I've been having a ton of issues lately with that, but yeah, peace out, guys. Thanks for watching.